Good evening and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it's the goal of all of us associated with our program to bring you current and educational information associated with the alcohol and drug epidemic, not only here in the city of Brockton, but throughout many of our South Shore communities. This evening, we're pleased to have as our guest Sean Merrill. Sean is the Executive Assistant for Teen Challenge, and with Sean tonight is his mother, Cheryl Juaire. Did I do that right or wrong?
Juaire.
Juaire. I blew it. Okay, I apologize for that. And Cheryl is here with Sean to talk about I'm going to call it the emotional roller coaster of substance abuse disorder. And at this point in time, we want to let our audience know that Cheryl and Sean lost a loved one to the substance abuse disorder. And tell us a little bit about that, please, Cheryl.
So I lost my son, Corey. He was 23 years old, February 24th, 2011. I was living in Florida at the time, and he was living up here in Massachusetts. Sean and Corey used drugs together, but back then it was not understood about addiction like I understand it today. So back then I would just tell the two of them, knock it off, cut it out, go get a job. What are you doing at 23 years old on food stamps? You know, that's not your average kid. Go out and do something. I didn't understand addiction like I do now, like I said. So I got the phone call, and I was in total shock. I did not know that he was even using heroin. We flew up to Massachusetts to bury him, and buried him, and I had a job in Florida I had to get back down to, so I drove back to Florida. Didn't really know a whole lot of people. My husband and I belonged to a church down there that were really nice people, but they didn't know Corey. They didn't know how to deal with anybody who had lost a child. So I suffered in grief alone for 2.5 years. So I didn't know grief. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about support groups. There was nothing on Facebook. So I was left alone. And I just thought that was normal. But I suffered deep.
As many parents suffer when they don't realize the impact that, the loss of a loved one first and foremost has on the family. Right. And particularly the parents in particular. Right. But more importantly, where do you turn to? Who do you ask for help? How do you ask for help?
Right.
Many of the things that, if you go back 5 years ago when Corey passed, so there was something going on before that.
Right.
You know.
So 2.5 years into it, we decided to move back home because I was actually flying home every 3 months to just visit his grave. And I would fall apart and then go back to work as usual. And so we decided to move back home, and I needed to do that. And one day my husband said to me, you should really go to a meeting. And I was like, why? And he said, because I just think it's a good idea. I said, okay. So we went to an Al-Anon meeting. And while sitting there, people were talking around. They were taking their turns. And when it came to my turn, because I'm thinking, I really don't need to be here, I just let it all out. I mean, 2.5 years, I just cried, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, no, that's okay. So one mom that was there, because Al-Anon is actually for it's like Learn to Cope, but it's for people that have children in active addiction, which he was. But I met a mom there, and her name is Kathy Leonard, and we became good friends. And shortly after my meeting there, she lost her son. So I reached out to her. I went to the funeral, and we just said, we need to do something. And so we started a local support group through GRASP.
Through GRASP.
Yes, that's what we did. Kathy still continues the group. As a matter of fact, her meeting's tonight. I couldn't be there. But because of my suffering, because of the pain that I felt, I decided that I wanted to help other mothers. So I helped open up different grief groups.
Mm-hmm.
People on their own, not necessarily GRASP,
Right.
but if you wanted to do GRASP, that was a whole different organization, but that's okay. It was still a support group. It was something that I didn't have, that I didn't want another mother to have to miss out on. There have been times where there was a particular mom who just recently lost her son. I was the second phone call. She called the police, and then she called me, and I went right to her house while her son was still there for support, because she was in the active addiction community and she knew what my role was.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been blessed. God's blessed me with that ability to help grieving
To
moms
reach out to
because
those.
of what I went through.
Right. And it's very interesting that as parents now, Peggy and I are blessed because we had 2 sons that were involved in the heroin addiction, and they are both in recovery today. So, but they're with us, so we count our blessings every day.
Right.
Believe me, we do. And it's just so interesting that when you experience something as devastating as a substance abuse disorder with a loved one, the loss of a loved one, more importantly, how that inner strength that comes from within, and you just really want to help others.
Right.
I mean, that's how we started as
Right.
Deadly Silence 5.5 years ago.
Right.
The same thing.
Right.
Information is powerful.
Right.
And it's really, really sad that more and more people are unable to open up about what's happening out there today with the substance abuse
Right.
addiction out there.
Right.
I want to turn to Sean a little bit, and your brother, you and he together, sounds like, are obviously experimenting and involved with this addiction. So tell us a little bit about what happened. What happened there?
So it was actually, Corey was quite a bit younger than me. He was 7 years younger than me, and he was actually the one who introduced me to opiates. I had a pretty good, successful life, and had married, bought a home, had a great job, and at the age of 25, he had come over to my house, and him and his friends had been experimenting, and I was 25, so he was 17 or 18 years old, and he said that he had these pills, and that him and his friends called them the happy pills, and they were painkillers. He said that they took them and they made them feel good, and that day I had a tough day at work, and it was nothing out of the ordinary, but it was just a long, tough day, and having my brother tell me he's got something that's going to make me happy, and not being any of the wiser, I tried them that day, and it started a 10-year path of destruction for me and for my brother. Over those next 10 years, we continued using together. Like I said, I had a good job. I stuck with painkillers for a long time, as much as I could. I was able to afford them. Corey turned to heroin a lot sooner than I did, but I was buying painkillers off of him so he could fuel his heroin addiction, and I knew it. And ultimately, I ended up turning to heroin myself when I couldn't keep up anymore. And the first time I tried heroin was with Corey, and when I overdosed, and Corey was there with his girlfriend, and when I started turning blue, Corey called 911, and the paramedics came, and they Narcaned me and revived me, and I remember just opening my eyes and just seeing the paramedics and the police and everything all around me, and sitting up and seeing my brother Corey, and I said, "What happened?" And he told me that I had overdosed and that he had called 911, and it wasn't too much longer after that when I got the call, and I wasn't there to call 911 for him, and when I got that call, I had all kinds of feelings of shame and guilt, and I didn't know if it was a dream, if it was really happening, if he really passed, and over those next few days, it was extremely difficult. I say for me, but more for me, I think, watching my mom and watching my parents and have to go through things that no family should have to go through. I remember one in particular was having to pick out his casket at the funeral home. It was very, very hard, and you know, just seeing my mom fall on the ground in pain, and you know, it's very difficult.
You know, there's certainly a tremendous amount of guilt and remorse that takes place when that happens, certainly for your mom in particular, you know, but you were also married. You had a family, you know. What was that like?
I was separated at that point. Where,
okay.
Yeah, my wife had put up with me for so long, and you know, over those 10 years, I went to 8 different programs and treatment centers, and they were all 30 days or less, but I just kept failing, and you know, Corey went to just as many more than I did, and we just couldn't get it. We tried and tried, and we just couldn't get it. And so my wife had, again, she didn't understand addiction. She just knew that her husband was sick, and he wasn't getting it, and we had a child, and I was putting his life in harm, you know, with my decision. So at that point, you know, I was all alone, and you would think all of those things would be enough for me to stop using drugs, and they all were. I just couldn't. But seeing how selfish I was, it took Corey's death for me to see the pain that I was actually causing all my family. I didn't realize how much pain I was causing until Corey passed, and then I realized that it would be extremely selfish of me to make them go through that again. And I cried out and I asked God to help me, and I said that I would do whatever it takes. And ultimately, God put a pastor in my path, and within the next couple of years, sent me to Teen Challenge. And I just celebrated 2.5 years drug and alcohol free last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we want to talk a little bit about the Teen Challenge program shortly. But Cheryl, when you came back up from Florida, Sean, were you still in a substance abuse state?
When she came back up from Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point?
Yeah.
He was still, because he had moved to Florida.
Oh, okay.
Shortly after Corey died, he came down, and so he gave me a run for my money for about 1.5 years down there.
That must have been pretty traumatic, having obviously lost Corey, and now you're seeing your older son.
It was very traumatic, actually. When my husband and I moved back, Sean stayed in Florida for a while, and I think probably a couple of days before he actually went to Teen Challenge, I got a phone call that they thought he had overdosed in a car. His head was on the horn, and the doors were locked, and he couldn't. The windows were up, and nobody could get him. So they called me and said that they were calling the police, and my husband and I were out, and I just got on my knees. I said, God, please don't take another one. I can't do this again. And so, fortunately, he was alive when they broke into the car, and then he joined Teen Challenge, and that's where he's at, and it's been all good.
So you get a second chance, obviously, at that point in time. And how did you come about selecting Teen Challenge? As you said, you asked for the grace of God.
Yeah, exactly. I did. I certainly didn't ask for Teen Challenge. I asked some people that were put in my life that were very good, godly men, and I asked them what they thought I should do. I said I need help, and they mentioned Teen Challenge, and I thought they were joking, because I was 35 years old. And
the
Teen Challenge.
Teen Challenge, that's the teenagers.
And so I chuckled, and shortly after that, I messaged my wife, and she said, "There's this place called Teen Challenge up here in Massachusetts." My wife was living in Massachusetts, and she said that if you come up to the Brockton Teen Challenge, I can bring your son, Jonathan, to come and visit you on Sundays. And so from Florida, I said, okay, I'll go up. It's a it's a 15-month-long program, but my wife will bring my son to see me, and I'll be able to at least see my little boy, and maybe I can semi be a dad to him. And so I came up, and
Now, you must have been skeptical given the number of other times you've, went into other programs, short-term stay, like I said, under 30 days pretty much.
Yeah.
Now you're making a 18-month commitment.
Right.
Well, his intentions were to ace it. He thought he'd go in, see Jonathan, and just do what he had to do and then get out as fast as he could. That was his intentions, but
Yeah.
God had other plans.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yep.
I was still in the, in active addiction, and within my addiction, I was very manipulative, and I thought that I would be able to, just come up, and I wasn't really sure what I was in for. I just knew I needed a program, and I was willing to do what people suggested that I did, and like she said, God had other plans. I walked in the door, and it was so different than any program that I've ever been to. I had people telling me that they believed in me, that they loved me. They were praying for me, and I felt genuine love. And it was something that being in addiction for 10 years and hurting people, and it's hard for people to love you anymore. And so to go into
Hard for you to love them too.
yeah, it was hard for me to
Yeah.
love myself.
Yeah.
I didn't love myself, and so to go into an environment like that, it was really warm and comforting, and it was what I needed. I needed love, and I got it, and I didn't want to leave, and God started doing things in my family, miraculous things. My wife would bring my son to see me every Sunday, and about 3 months into it, I think I've shared this with you before.
Yeah.
We went to court for the divorce, and she said that I've been seeing my son, my husband, and I've been seeing something different in him, and I'd like to postpone it. And I'm still wearing the ring today. She's eventually dropped it, and we just bought a home.
Get yourself back on your feet. I understand you just completed your licensing as an licensed electrician, something that you were doing at one time and lost as part of the addiction.
Yeah, so I was a licensed journeyman electrician in Massachusetts, and every 3 years you have to do a code update class. It's a 15-hour course, and it's $175. It's not a big deal, but when you're in addiction, you don't have the time or the money to worry about that stuff, and so I just let it go. Eventually lost my license, and it lapsed, and I kind of thought that I lost it forever. And through the program of Teen Challenge, they helped me get in touch with the Board of Electricians, and they imposed a fine on me, and they told me that I had to do the 15-hour course 5 times in order to get it back, but they made it possible. But something that I'm extremely proud of is that when I did the course the first time, the instructor told me that this is ridiculous. Nobody should have to do the 15-hour course 5 times. It's the same course. Just come to this class and I'll sign you off for all 5 of them. And I thought, wow, this is great. What a blessing. I don't have to waste 5 weekends of my life, and I'll be able to get my license back. But as I went back home and prayed on it, Teen Challenge taught me to, God is my sponsor. And the Bible teaches you to do the right thing even when nobody's looking. And I'm a leader in Teen Challenge now, and I ask the young men to do the same thing. And so what kind of example would I be leading to? If the state of Massachusetts gave me a penalty, I need to pay it, and I need to fulfill it. And so it was difficult for me to go back to that instructor and say, I'm sorry, I actually have to do all 5 classes. But I did, and we went through it, and just on Monday, I received my electrical license in the mail after completing all 5.
I saw the Facebook posting.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Great, congratulations on that. Cheryl, where are you in the family relationship with Sean now? I mean, what's happening? What's the dynamics like today?
well, I love Teen Challenge, obviously. So, I support him 100%. There's been just a huge change, and I know it's genuine. So, you know, he could blindside me for years with the addiction, but this I know is permanent. I know he's got it.
You know, kind of what do you have to say to the parents out there that might be dealing with a loved one who's, you know, has a substance abuse disorder?
Well, there's hope. I mean, you've always got to give people hope.
Yeah.
You know, there is hope. He's the perfect example.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've had both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I'd just like to share too that, along with my support in the live support groups, I also have an online support group. As we met different moms in Massachusetts that had lost children through these support groups, I started an online Facebook group called Sharing Our Child's Loss from Substance Passing in Mass. And we have over 200 moms in there, and dads, from Massachusetts only. And it's just an amazing support group.
And they get to reach out to each other
We
at any
talk
point in time.
when somebody's going through a really bad day, somebody else has already had that day,
Yeah.
and encourages them. And so they don't have to go out someplace. If they want to stay in bed all day, we say that's okay, because that's part of grief. Don't let anybody make you feel bad. The worst part for all of us is when you forget our child and forget to say their name. That's just, you know, people just expect that you're supposed to move on. And that's really, really horrible. So every day, I have a list of all their children's dates of birth and dates of death, and every single day we acknowledge that child on that particular day. And yeah, we're a great support group. Last night there was the International Overdose Awareness Vigil in Marlborough. Jim Wahlberg spoke at it.
Okay.
My girlfriend Kathy Leonard put it on, and she did a tremendous job. There was probably about 400 people there. I reached out to the group, and there was about 50 of the moms came, and there was a slideshow with their children's pictures and stuff. But we were there together, arm in arm, holding on to each other, supporting each other, watching this vigil happen last night.
It's really difficult. When we were at the Brockton Vigil last Thursday night, and you know, I think it was the 4th or 5th annual vigil that the Brockton Mayor's Office of Opioid Prevention put on, and what did we see? Almost 200 faces go across the screen. Yeah. You know, it's staggering, you know, to see the devastation that it's taking on our young men and women out there today. It really, really is. And, you know, it's courage such as your courage, the ability to start organizations like your online, you know, support group, work with the GRASP organization, that is only going to make this a much more better opportunity for the future of our kids, because that's what we're dealing with here now. We're losing a generation to drugs.
1,531. We had that many purple flags out there at the Walker Building in Marlborough. 1,531.
That was for the deaths of last year, just in Massachusetts.
In 2014, it was 1,256. So it's growing.
And that's interesting, because I can remember when Peggy and I first got involved 5+ years ago, you know, the statistics were 2 residents a day were dying to the opioid epidemic, and now it's really closer to 5.
Right.
You know,
it's almost 5, yeah.
And you know, you would think that with the heightened awareness that is there today that wasn't there 5 years ago, that this shouldn't be happening. It should be going the other way, but it's not. You know, and we haven't figured that piece out. You know.
So I've also gotten involved in the campaign for a safe and healthy Massachusetts to vote no on question 4, the ballot question, if I could put a plug in for
Absolutely,
that.
Please do.
Yeah, so I think introducing recreational marijuana during this epidemic would be horrific for the state of Massachusetts. The governor, the lieutenant governor, Boston mayor, they all agree. 9 senators went over to Colorado, did a investigation. They came back. I've read the report. it would be absolutely horrific.
And we've seen statistical information coming out of Colorado where there has been an increase in emergency room visits, particularly with the younger boys and girls, I'm going to say, you know,
right.
in relationship to...
The pro-marijuana people are targeting the youth because they figure if they get the youth hooked, they have a customer for life.
Yeah, well, they
And
will.
so that's basically what they're doing, and they're packaging their edible marijuana into packages that are look
Little fruit
enticing for
snacks.
children.
Yeah, little fruit
Gummy
snacks,
bears,
gummy bears,
all that stuff. So they know what they're doing, just like the big marijuana, big tobacco.
Big tobacco,
did,
right? Yep.
Exactly, just like them, and they're trying to do the same thing. So we're not. They're trying to convince people that this is a marijuana that's going to help you medically. They're not telling them about the recreational part. We've already voted in medical marijuana here
correct.
in 2012.
Right.
So that's already been approved. Recreational would be devastating to this state and to this epidemic. So I just need to say
So the
that.
message is vote no?
Vote no, question 4.
Question
And I
4.
will be in the Labor Day parade this coming Monday with my signs, my T-shirts, and 50 other followers as we parade down the street saying, vote no, question 4.
Question 4. Absolutely. Sean, Teen Challenge, obviously a tremendous success for you personally. You are now a leader, as you said, as an executive assistant. I call it community outreach because I see you everywhere.
Yes.
You know, and the men and the testimonies and the tremendous change that has happened in their lifestyle is a tremendous success to everything that Teen Challenge represents in the addiction and recovery out there. So how would somebody out there who might be struggling reach out to Teen Challenge?
Okay, well, just real quick, I just want to say that, you know, if you are struggling, and you know, for me, I was very, we can handle the pain, we can handle the pressure as addicts. But please look at my mom, look at other moms, and when they lose us, when she lost my brother, and when if you continue with your addiction, you will die from an overdose. Please think of your loved ones. Think of your parents. Think of your mom. Please, it's not just hurting you. It's hurting your family and your loved ones. Teen Challenge. There's over 250 locations throughout the United States. In Brockton, our campus right now, we hold 73 beds. We have an addition. We always have an open bed. If you can't afford the program, we've never turned anybody away. There's help. The thing that you'll get different from Teen Challenge is love. We'll come in wherever you're at. Come in. We want to show you love. We want to pray for you. We want to help you and be there with you through this process. There's a phone number, 508-586-1494, or visit our website, www.tcnewengland.org. And if you have a chance, make sure you come and visit our banquet on October 15th with James Wahlberg and Joanne Peterson as our
guest of honor.
Guests
right?
of honor.
Yep.
Yeah, we're very, very excited
and,
to have them.
we know what Jim Wahlberg has done out there
so
in
much.
putting together that fantastic movie.
Which I was in.
Which, yes.
Yep.
In addition to Joanne Peterson, she was one of the first people that both Peggy and I ended up reaching out to
She's
with
amazing.
the Learn to Cope organization.
You've done so much
you know,
for our state.
And, you know, it's incredible. And, you know, we've got the Fed Up rally coming up later this month in September up in Washington, D.C., and that's just growing every year much bigger and bigger, you know, on putting the pressure on the government to do the right thing and find the support necessary to help everyone. Absolutely. On behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, I want to say, Cheryl, thank you for coming in. Sean, thank you for sharing your story with us. And on behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, we'll see you again next week.